level when life was demanding of you. The best and fastest of life, all the things you've been through. Just a word of advice that I hope that you use. An open mind is a weapon, you were born with the tools. I'm trying to provide a message only few will receive. See, the problem isn't the problem, it's the way it's perceived. Is you lying in the soil or you climbing a tree? See, the bottom isn't the bottom, cause there's roots underneath. You should listen to my music, cause it's truth that I speak. I promise you got the keys, watch the heights that you reach.
All right.
Good?
So yeah, we good.
All right.
So we are now entering our next phase of the APJ Foundation podcast, and we have a special guest today, Joe Grimes,
Hey.
and then we have Briaunna as host, and myself, Abdullah Jamison, founder of the APJ Foundation. Our mission and goal is to uplift the youth, empower them, and motivate them to a successful future.
Yeah.
And our topic today is mental health.
Yeah.
And
how to be authentic, leading
Yeah.
yourself by being authentic.
Yep.
Yes, sir.
So we'll get right into it, and I'll lead off with you, Joe, and we can iterate on that.
Okay.
But what I like to do is like to tell yourself a little bit about yourself.
Yeah.
And then once again, Briaunna, just I want you to introduce yourself once again. So
Okay.
Yeah. So.
All right. Well, I'll start it off. My name is Joe Grimes. I am currently in sales. I'm a business sales manager in telecommunications for pretty big provider, and I'm 36 years old now. I feel like I've come a long way, even though I'm still fairly young. And I get behind what Abdullah's trying to do with his vision, the APJ Foundation. A lot of great work. I'm passionate about mentoring the youth as well. It's something that I missed in my childhood. So what you're doing is really, really good, and I can get behind somebody who has a vision like that. I'll pass it over to you.
I appreciate that.
And I'm Briaunna Embrey-Banks, little cousin of Abdullah here. I'm the CEO and founder of Owning My Blackness and Owning My Blackness Consulting. We work to educate, advocate, and elevate for Black students, as well as to disrupt systematic racism in education. Just a little bit about me.
Cool, real cool.
Awesome. So let's go right into it with Joe, and then let's speak about the mental health part and give you a little perspective on things, how we can we can do it, and bringing awareness to the youth on things that they're going through and dealing with, and how they can transform to getting the information and tools that they need.
Yeah. Well, for one, I'll preface my statement by saying, I'm not an expert,
right,
but these are just purely observations, things that I've used to navigate my life, and I'm comfortable where I'm at now. But just to go back, and you probably know a good bit about this, a study that I found, and a lot of us can relate to it, is, there was a study of about 8,500 students, and 7,000 of them were white, 1,500 of them were Black, and the study talked about the kids' upbringing. They were all 9 to 10 years old, talked about their upbringing and how their environment could have potentially impacted their learning development. The 1,500 Black students were significantly underperforming in comparison to a lot of the white folks or white kids, and a large part of it is because these 9 and 10-year-olds were going back home and they were experiencing trauma that they didn't know were trauma, whereas these other kids, they didn't have anything like that impacting their development. And so the biggest thing about that is the generational cycles that we repeat. Like our parents, they grow up, there's a lot of single-family homes, and a lot of us think it's normal for us to grow up that way, and we're numb to a lot of the things that go on in our life, and other people think it's not regular, it's not common, but we're numb to it by now. So a lot of it has to start with the parents. We can't really co-parent with the government. There's a lot of single mothers out there as well, and so it starts with the parents. There's a lot of young men out there that I think could use some mentorship, which is why I'm here today. And then eventually, as you expand, something that I would want to be a part of, helping you mentor some of these kids as well, and partaking in your movement here. Yeah.
What's your thoughts?
I wanted to touch on something you were talking about the underperformance. It's often a topic I discuss.
Yeah.
It's something that they call the racial achievement gap, which essentially says when you look at statistics such as SAT scores, GPAs, graduation rates, that when you divide these scores up by race, that black students underperform compared to any other race significantly. And the reasons for that is, like a lot what you said, historical factors, household factors such as the single parent household and such, mental health, and also the aspect we got to think of because of these single parent households we talk about. As much as we like to think that it's a stereotype or that it's just kids picking on each other, it is scarce reality for our community and has been dating back for centuries now, having a lot to do with some things our communities experienced, unlike others, such as slavery and desegregation. But now when you get to things like how does it play out in today's realm? Well, if you're being raised by a single parent, your single parent is often probably working more than one job to keep a roof over your head and keep food on the table, which means they don't have time to sit with you. Let's go over math. Let's go over reading. Yep. Often these children are coming home, especially one of the older siblings, and they are raising themselves and also raising their younger siblings when they are not grown enough to do them so themselves.
100%.
So when you add all that into a factors, now you get into the generation where everyone's like, oh, these kids think they're so grown. Well, a lot of them never had the chance to be a child. A lot of them are going off of their own thoughts, experiences, what they know of social media is because they are essentially raising themselves.
Yeah.
Whether that is within control or out of control, that is what we are seeing now. And because of that, we are leading to when you be like, well, none of these kids are motivated. Who's motivating them?
Right.
What is that? The only thing you think about what you thought about that age they care about is being cool with their friends, getting a little bit of cash in their pocket, and just hanging out. They don't have no motivation because there's no one to tell them like, hey, once you get out there, like it's rough.
Right.
The likelihood of you going to the NBA or being the next TikTok rapper is slim to none.
Yeah. That's
Making it out. So because there is no one to give them that type of guidance and to force them and hold them accountable for their own actions, we are now seeing the repercussions of that.
Yeah, that's a fact. There's a statistic out there. So 90% of the single-parent households are mothers, right? And a lot of us are like, okay, I mean, we get it. We see that every day. Out of that 90%, 45% of those of that 90% are black women, and 23% are Latino, Hispanic. Okay, and then the rest are, 13% are white, and the rest are just other races. And that's like the fact that 45% of that 90% of mothers are black, like that's a heavy weight.
That's
half.
That's
almost half.
half.
That's almost half, and it's so funny when if you're growing up and you're talking to some friends, some colleagues, and they say, oh, I'm gonna my dad, I'm gonna see my dad at home. You're like, oh, okay, you have a dad, okay. And a lot of people think it's a rarity in our community sometimes. We like having a father figure in the home, and nonetheless having both parents in the home, mom and dad. So, and that leads us to like if 90% of the single parent households are women, that means that if there's a boy in the household, if there's a son, like you said, they got to step up. A lot of them are not thinking about being a kid. A lot of them are thinking about being an adult
and
providing. Yeah. So there's I grew up. I'm from the South. I'm from Orlando, and I grew up in a pretty bad neighborhood. Like it's no different than any other inner city. And speaking of somebody, there's a guy I grew up with, and we'll just say his name is Rich. He had a nickname we call him. He's still alive right now. So his name is Rich. And he was the oldest of 4 siblings. And he had a younger sister and 2 younger brothers. And he was influenced by our environment in the sense that he thought that, he can just go out on the street, start selling to provide for his family. He was a senior in high school, and he got caught up. One night, somebody ran up on him, slit his neck from ear to ear. I didn't find out about it. We were, I wouldn't say we were super close, but we were friends, Like in our neighborhood, we cherish, I'm from the South, so we played a lot of sports, football, we were foot race. And this guy was the fastest guy in our neighborhood, and that's why it stuck out to me, because I wanted to be the fastest guy in my neighborhood. We would race all the time. So I kind of looked up to him. I found out about the incident the day after. He was hospitalized, but he was out there selling because he was trying to provide for his family.
Right.
You know, single mom. Mom was working 2 jobs. The younger siblings weren't doing anything. He's 17 years old, put his life on the line. He didn't know he was doing that because it was so easily accessible for him to just go out there and start selling, making money. He was doing it for about 2 months before that happened. But that's heavy. We see that all the time. We see that all the time.
One of the things that we see so much in the inner city is that, it's labels that our youth are getting placed on. Even when I was growing up, these labels, they're bad. And one of the things that I try to I stress to, to everyone, whether you black, brown, white, is that they're misguided. The same way a lot of us, as being young, we was misguided. We was influenced by it's almost like we became a product of our environment.
That's exactly
what it boils down to. One of the things that, we focus, I think, and I was talking with my father today, and speaking about that, me and my brothers, we was raised by our father.
Yeah.
So our mother had left when we was young. So my father's raised us. So he wouldn't let us leave, and he took the torch and made sure that he kept us together, and that which he made a profound influence on the development of me and my brothers. We all businessmen. All my brothers take care of their kids. They're good fathers, But one of the things that we deal with so much in our community is even us, our mom leaving, that was trauma to us that we really didn't understand either, because we were so stern in just being men. That's what my father taught us from when we was kids. Like, I remember hearing a conversation between my mother and father, and my mother was like, my father was like, they men, and my mom was like, they ain't men, they boys. But my father knew what he was doing because he was preparing us. And that's the biggest thing right now, is that our kids aren't being prepared. And when you have that 40% of black women and the single women raising, because I give all props to to the queens out there that take care and provide and guide their offspring to the best they know how.
Right.
But at the same time, no woman can teach a man, a boy, how to be a man.
That's important.
She's a nurturer. That's what they do. And my father and mind you, by all means, we grew up in a family with both parents in our household. So we had that influence. We had that nurturing from our mother, and then we have the sternness from our father. But what he did is he was shaping and molding us for the real world. And a lot of times for these youth, they don't know how to be men because they don't see that. They don't know that if something needs broken in the house, you just don't wait around and just you either buy it, replace it, fix it, do that. These things they haven't, and this is what I was taught when I was growing up. So it's like, I always remember, being in my household waiting for an appliance to break so I can go run to Lowe's to go buy a brand new one, because that was just me, but once again, it goes back to the kids being a product of their environment and what they have not seen. Yeah. So one thing my father always would say is that they don't know any better. And they don't.
That's true.
They don't know. And then, just like you talk about racism, Brianna, you speak highly about how that played a big effect and arose from Jim Crow, from the dismantle of the black family, from when you got public housing. Let's just go, we can go right there. We talk about the public housing, where that woman can't have a man in that house. If not, she would lose her housing.
Right.
Well, you got to figure, and it's a big thing we failed to realize, is economics. We didn't have doctors and lawyers and all that stuff growing up. It was a very small group of individuals that did have educated parents and knew things. Most of our parents was just surviving. So that's what we've been in. So most black and brown have been in survival mode. But now and that's still no excuse because we still, if we look at this in our society, we still in a country of abundance. We're in a great country, so we do have to understand that we do have to take utilize the tools that's there, no matter how little it may seem or how hard that road may be.
Right.
But at the same time, it still goes back to the foundation of the family. And when that is dismantled like that, and these kids aren't being taught well and educated well, then you have a problem where they start to adapt by learning from their peers or from what society has placed out in front of them.
Absolutely.
Which is, you got the nice car, the shiny, the jewelry and things like that, and then that's what they look at as defining you as success, and that's not success.
Nope.
It has nothing, and that's one thing that I teach so much, even with the foundation, with the youth that come here, is that I always try to tell them is that you focus on developing you, and developing you has to come with, when they come in, most of these kids, they're always looking for money, and I said the money it's going to come, but focus on the skills.
Yeah.
Focus on developing yourself. And that's what it falls back into more now than ever is, we have to build an environment that we let these kids, it's okay to fail. And it's okay. And the whole thing I always say is not trying is not okay with me. Not trying is not okay with me. I don't care if you fail. And we it's like these kids when they fail a test, it's like automatically, it's like you get this F.
Right.
No. You know what I mean? You tried.
Yep.
Let's figure out how we can pass this test. How can we give you the skills and tools that you need? Because let's take it for granted. It's like, if you look at certain things in life, most kids can be academically smart, but then can't face the real world when it comes to, every day getting up and going to work, being productive. And you can have a person that can't read and write that is super productive and, and has a skill or a talent in putting in the work, So these are the things that, we have to keep in mind, that, the most of our kids are shaped and molded in a certain way, and we have to break that cycle.
Yeah, no, I was just going to say, tying in some ideals that both you said, this idea of molding an environment and the mental health of the kids and what they're exposed to. A lot of these children do not see higher for themselves besides like sports and rap and social media, because that is all they're exposed to.
Right.
Uncle's locked up in jail, mom's working 2 jobs, they've only ever seen the hood. Like this, to them, that is their reality. And because when they go to school, they are also learning to be real whitewashed history and curriculum, they don't see people who look like them doing more for themselves, so they don't see more for themselves. We don't talk about things like Seneca Village in schools. For those who have no idea what I'm talking about, Central Park in New York used to be a completely black town where there were school teachers, doctors, lawyers, and at some point it actually made up almost 50% of black voters in New York, because at the time you could not vote if you did not own $250 worth of land or more. Wow. And that included over 90% of the black population in New York at the time.
Wow.
But what happened? The government came in and said, because it's a park, we do not have to pay you for your land, and you have to get off. And they built Central Park on top of it.
Wow.
We do not hear things like the Tulsa Race Massacre and Black Wall Street, where we once again have black lawyers, black business owners, black teachers, black franchise owners. Yeah. We don't hear about things like that, and how there were people who have done it, pulled it off, had it scraped away, and did it again. Since they are not exposed to this history, since they are not exposed to people who are currently doing it, they don't see more for themselves. They don't want more for themselves. Then you start getting conversations, well, why do I need school? I don't need school. I'm just going to go work at the McDonald's down the street and make a quick check and buy some Jordans, because that's all they see for themselves. To them, that is not a feasible reality. And if we continue this cycle of not exposing them to what has happened in the past and people who are making it work in today's certain time, we're going to be stuck in this endless cycle, which ultimately plays a part in their mental health. If you cannot see any better for yourself, you not only stop to give up in school, you start to give up in life in general. you don't want to go out there and hustle. You don't want to get out of bed. What's the point of getting dressed?
Yeah.
I'm just going to be stuck here no matter what.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What's your thought, Joe, when it comes to what do you what kind of ways do you see far as for the youth that you can give? Because just like you said, you came up in a single household and things like that. What made you steer to a certain direction?
Yeah. So for one, and you touched on it already, I valued experiences more than just trying to make some cash.
Right.
One thing that you touched on is you're in a rare situation where your dad in your situation, you guys are in that 10%.
Okay.
And being in that 10% where your single parent household as a dad, you were taught structure.
Right.
Okay? You were also taught to be your authentic self. Like, all right, don't mold. Like, those shoes don't matter.
Right.
Your dad's gonna tell you, hey man, those Jordans are cool, but I'm not paying $200 for those shoes.
Right.
Whereas your mom might be in the nurturing. Okay, my baby wants this.
Yeah.
I'm gonna work. I'm gonna save up a little bit.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna try to get you, even if it's one or two.
Right.
You want 5 of them. I'll get you one. For
Right.
Christmas one day. Your dad's gonna be you're not getting those shoes.
Yeah.
Okay. So one thing that you were taught was to be your authentic self. You not let your environment really impact your decision making, and that's the biggest thing. You valued experiences because you were taught that.
And I'm so glad you did. I mean, when you mentioned about shoes, because it was so ironic. Like, because the projects was right up the street from out, and I'm from Parkway, where I go up on the north end of the town, and the project was right up the street. And most of the kids growing up, they had the Jordans, they had the nice clothes, but my father made more than all of those. Mm-hmm. Most of the individuals that wasn't, because we had the corner store, he worked at Caterpillar, and he didn't emphasize on things like that. Well, we never, and my father, he's Muslim, so we never had Christmas and things like that, and we didn't emphasize. We didn't follow the trend what everybody else is doing. Yeah. So even though we didn't have the Christmas and things like that, it actually helped us because it made me, as I grew older, I'm like, I don't need that to be defined as a man. I don't need to get validation from anyone, and that's just how I am right now. So, and you speak about shoes, so I would buy my son, he had more than what I had growing up, you know what I mean? And that was because I had more, I didn't have a lot of kids. It was just him and his daughter and my sister. And then one of the things that he would wear his sneakers, and whether his mom bought them or I bought them, and I would make him work in them, no matter what the price was, because I didn't want him to value them sneakers that was his. So she was like, "Oh, you mess up us." I'm like, "You're not understanding. I don't want him to get attached to physical things, because once he does that, then you start to lose your identity, and that's what happens." Yeah. We speak about. And you see it in the bigger cities, and whether it's Philly, New York, and things like that. Being as though most people live in project houses and in subsidized houses, they have a tendency to where what they have on their back defines them, and that's why I'm so glad. Wasn't brought up in a big city, because I would have probably emphasis on the gold and the jewelry and things like that, but I bought my first home when I was 25 years old, because I understood the importance of ownership, having a property, things like that. Yeah. So I emphasize on things because my father was young when he bought his home, and all my other siblings, as far as my brothers, own their own homes and things like that. Yeah. So it's so important what we teach and how we shape and mold our kids. And not only what you were saying was how they envision themselves. What are they, and where you don't need the material things to define you. Yeah.
100% fact. Like, that like having a male figure in some capacity is so important, and it's not just like, okay, if you have shared custody, you got a father figure there, you can refer to him, but like if you have a father figure in the house where you got to answer to every decision you make, or they're shaping your decision making, they're shaping how you see the world. That's a little bit different, Right. It's not just 3 days out the week and then 2 days out the week, and all they're trying to do is just show you fun and make sure you have a good time. That's different. Yeah. If you're seeing them every day, sometimes they care if you have fun, sometimes they don't.
Yeah.
You know, and they're like, all right, you can have fun, but hey, it's time to clean up.
Yeah,
All right,
exactly.
hey, it's time to go get a bath. Hey, it's time
Exactly.
to, that's different.
And sorry about that, but I just because I want to use this thought was because that was what my father taught us was when we had to go work in the store or we had to go in apartment buildings and sand the floors and things like that, that we had to earn our way in life. And that was important. As much as we, you know, and a lot of time when we would go pick up supplies, we was so excited about doing it because it was like a ritual to go pick up supplies for the store, and you know, it's so important that, you know, when it comes to when you say how we it's not just having that male figure there, but it's also leading by example, and that's the biggest part because you can have a fool inside your home as well, and that's where you got to be, you know, real cautious on how you're, you know, that, you know, the biggest teaching is leading by example, and that was one thing that my father was able to do well. He was always consistent. So, you know, I never see my father in the morning before we went to school because he was already gone for work, and that's all I knew. He was always at work, so this is all I knew. So now you have, you know, my brothers and us, and this is the people like, all you do is work. Well, this is what I've been taught. So, you know what I mean, I understood how economic, I understood how to buy and resell things and things like that. So, which is so important.
No, I wanted to ask you, bringing back to this ideal that you keep talking about, the authentic self. Especially keeping in mind the youth that might be viewing this who do not have these father figures that we are talking about. What do you, first of all, describe as, what is exactly, does that mean, your authentic self? And how can you figure that out if you do not have those positive influences in your life?
Yeah, and that's the gap right there. That's the gap in itself. So, you know, like with me thinking back of my environment and how I grew up, you know, I was looked at a little differently. I was in the hood, but when I would go to school, a lot of people didn't know I lived right across the street from my high school, and like, what do you mean you live across the street from your high school? That's all the hood. Like, yeah, I live, you know, 204 Jacobs Avenue. Like, I'm right there.
Right.
And but the biggest gap is that right there, being like trying to discover your authentic self. Like when I went with my friends and they're, you know, boasting about the latest jersey they got or the latest shoes, like I didn't necessarily care about that. But you know, I found myself every now and again like, oh man, they got my boys got the latest shoes.
Right.
Let me go grab them. But I'm looking at them like, oh, I don't really care about that.
Right.
So like one thing that I did was I took a step back, and the things that that didn't get me excited, I noticed it. You know, the things that got my friends excited, the things that got my moms excited, my brothers excited, I didn't get excited about those material things, but I did get excited about, let's say I come across some I worked at McDonald's, you know, from 14 to all the way through college to about 22. And there was this guy there, his name was Sonny. And I cherished our conversations. He was about 65 years old. He served in the war. I think he went to Vietnam. He would talk about that. So I'm at work, and I would get distracted because I'm asking him questions about, hey, so what was it like being in Vietnam? Hey, so how did you get here? And I'm asking him, and I'm learning from his experiences. I would value that, and I would get excited about having conversation with older men or older women or somebody who had experience that can teach me something. Like I was passionate about that. And in doing so, I found like, all right, well, you know, you're 65, you're still working here, or you're 50, you're working here. Like that didn't really matter, but I want to learn about you. I want to learn what decisions you made, and if it was bad decisions, all right, I won't do that.
Right.
You know, and try to learn from other people's mistakes, other people's successes, and I think that helped me to determine the things that I got passionate about, the things that aren't important. You know, because there was a lot of people that would talk about their highs. Oh man, I had the latest chain. I had the latest car. I went to this place. All right, but now you're here. All right, so tell me how you got here, okay? But I would value those experiences, and I would use that as a barometer to kind of like, you know, steer me in the right direction. And truly, it was like a trial and error type of thing. Like I didn't have an answer. I didn't have a father figure in my house. I just knew the things that I didn't get passionate about and the things that I did, and I steered and I veered more towards those things that I got passionate about. Like I was an artist, and so you know, growing up, I would paint, I would draw, I would sculpt. I would get excited about that. So instead of going out, you know, I played basketball as well, but sometimes I would allocate more time to drawing because I was excited about that. You know, whereas my boys would be playing football, playing basketball. I would do that sometimes. But if I wasn't feeling it, all right, I'm going to go draw. And what you mean you about to go draw? We about to play 5-on-5. I'm going to go draw.
Right.
You know, so it was really a trial and error type of thing for me.
I'm so glad you answered that question because it was like one of the things that I read this morning. It was like when you see a good man, think of emulating him. When you see a bad man, examine your heart. It's a Chinese proverb.
Yeah.
You ever heard of that?
I haven't heard of that particular one.
Yeah. So and that's one of the things that, and I'm glad these youth have to look at good men because they do see those, whether they're on TV or whether in their community, and they don't have to be celebrities, but just look at the men that's around you in your community sometime, and you see the life that they're living and how, whether it's healthy, whether it be healthy choices. And that's one thing I respect a lot about you is that Joe, you're a well-rounded man, a father. And not only that, but you just bring so much value to this world, and I appreciate that.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, because there's so many that don't know. Because even when it comes to physical health, which plays a big part in the mental health, and how it shapes and molds us as well, how we feel internally, how we feel physically, and things like that. And not only that, but making good decisions. When you love yourself, you tend to make better decisions, whether it's in your personal life or business life.
Yeah.
And that's the biggest thing that we lack too in our community when it's dealing with the mental health problem is that we're not focusing on our physical health, so we get depressed. Whether it be females or male. And then we start consuming alcohol and drugs, and that's why you have a big such a big broad when so many people are using marijuana and things like that. They're using it to cover up what they're dealing with internally. True. And one of the things I always say is that try working out. Try that for a whole 2-3 months without consuming any drug, and see how you feel afterwards.
It's a game changer.
Yeah, it's a big game changer. And as you and I, we met in the gym, and and that's where I developed some of my my best thoughts, and not only that, but how I perceive life, and it being in shape and getting in shape.
Yeah.
I'm on back onto that road right now. But you know how the cookies be. They be calling.
Say the cookies.
The cookies be calling. So yeah.
I wanted to expand upon the ideals that both you were talking about, but I just kind of want to make it a little more clear, thinking in mind of the audience that we were trying to serve.
Yeah.
Right.
You both talked about in different ways how you may have grown up in the situation you're part of, the cards may not have been in your favor, but even if you are placed in a bad environment, you do have the option to create the environment that you are in. And what I'm saying is, no, you're not just going to magically fall upon money and go live in the suburbs or X, Y, and Z. Yeah. However, you can control things such as, almost all the youth, because I work in a high school, have some type of internet device, whether that's a tablet, a laptop, a cell phone. If you're spending all your time watching Bad Girls Club, Krishan Rock, Blueface, that is an environment that you're creating yourself into. Yeah. If you are listening to people who are in places you want to be, you hear a lot of youth talking all about that stuff, but then also a hint that they want to be a nurse one day. They want to be a lawyer. What nurse and lawyers are you following?
Right.
What do they talk about that is necessary to get to where they are at? You talk about you go and work at a fast food restaurant or a Target. Okay, I'm pretty sure there's a variety of people who work there. Who are you having conversations with? Are you having conversations with your peer who go and smokes a joint during break? Yeah. Or are you talking to the one who got 2 kids they're trying to provide for, and you're trying to figure out, okay, what decisions are you making that I might or might not want to make one day?
That's big.
To get to where you're at. So these type of things where you may not have the best mother, the best father, the best friends, you can control the people that you listen to. Right. You can control the people that you decide to have conversations with. You can control picking up books and reading. You would be surprised. We had just like a fun question. We do fun questions every day in my class. As I said, I also teach at a high school. It was like, what's your favorite book? you wouldn't believe the astonishing how many high schoolers told me, "Oh, I don't really read books."
Wow. Yeah.
And I'm like, "You're telling me no teachers since middle school have forced you to read a chapter book?" I don't even care if it's educational. You have not read a single chapter book.
Yeah.
The best I got an elementary. Somebody told me like, "No, David. If you have anything that is a book I read to my kindergarten class when I taught kindergarten."
Oh, wow.
And that was their favorite book when I asked, "What's your favorite book?"
Yeah.
which is extremely sad when you think about it, because again, this idea that I talked in our previous podcast, how everything in society connects, like it is one big giant puzzle.
Right.
Did you know that they decide how many prison beds they will need based off of the 3rd grade literacy level? Because there's a direct connection to literacy and crime.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if I'm now telling you there are high schoolers who can't tell me their favorite chapter book, that they have to go back to picture books where there's a sentence per page, what does that tell you for our youth we have about to come out? That is about to be the new leaders of this world.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah, that's very problematic. One of the things that ran across my in a conversation yesterday was your Kai's their grades, like how far they are behind right now. And that's the one thing is that, I was talking to my father about this too, is like, what are we producing? Who are we producing? Which are we producing engineers? What are we trying to produce? And when you talk about that, as far as the reading level, is that you're gonna produce what's happening now. From what I'm looking at, is that you're producing the next person that's going to go into prison because they don't have the tools nor the education that they need. So, and then 9 times out of 10, they you fall into the criminal world, which is a lot easier to pick up a pack and get a brick of coke or whatever that may be, that drug, and then make that money that the teachers are going to make in a couple months, So we got to be, we have to come up with solutions, and that's one of the biggest things that I'm adamant about when it comes to the APJ, is that we focus on solutions, not the problem.
Yeah.
And and as much as we know the statistics and we start getting the data and things like that, is what are our solutions? Well, our solution is trades. Our solution is parents stepping up and being better parents.
Yeah.
Stop being your child's friend.
Yeah.
Stop smoking weed with your kids. That's a form of child abuse more than you even know.
Yeah.
I mean, like I said, that's only my opinion, but I just I know I watch cousins, and I never even had a drink with my parents at all.
Right.
I don't even try to curse in front of them. You know what I mean? Even though I do that outside of their presence.
Right.
But at the same time, we got to be mindful that we need to lead by examples, and sometimes we with our especially the kids born in the 90s, they got, and then they had them kids young, and they didn't know how to be parents because they was young and they was forced in them, and a lot of them just did the best that they could have done under the circumstances. But at the same time, even now, you see the repercussion of that from the youth that's in the 20s and things like that, where they don't have good guidance. So once again, we have to get back to the parents. Being because anyone can change in a certain point in life, and that's one thing I always is that once they change their way of thinking, they can change their way of behavior. But it starts with the thought process. It starts what are you reading? What are you learning?
Right.
These are so important. So we have to, the parents that's maybe listen to this podcast, and God willing, everyone, as we start to move forward with our podcast and as we start to grow, these are the things that the parents have to look at themselves in order to produce a better product. And I hate to say it like that, whether it be a product but a better child, a better someone that's going to be productive. So we have to lead by example. That's the best teaching, and that's what my father and a lot of great men, even like my cousin Bobby, Michael Newsom, a lot of black men that didn't have that was in the same. These men was statistically wise, they should have failed, but they overcame everything that they was faced with from back in the 60s and 70s and things like that, and they, reached a great plateau in their life, which I respect and love about them. But at the same time, we have to develop more leaders in our communities.
Agree.
And we start with the youth. We have to, But at the same time, our parents, these parents out here, you can make a change. You can change your behavior. You can stop saying, I know I smoke weed with you all this time, but I'm not going to do it anymore. Try that, and how people do things in life, that's their choice. But at the same time, when we're losing our youth to gun violence and to drug addiction, whether it be opium and the pills and things like that, we have to keep in mind: do we really want to see our kids in laying in the casket? And I know no one wants that. So let's just keep that in mind. To that, it does start with the parents as well.
Yeah.
We have to be a role model to our kids.
Yeah, well, I want to touch on something that Bree said about, her high school students not reading. I think if there was one single most important thing that I've learned in adulthood, is the fact that reading will unlock your potential.
Yeah.
And the reality is, for a lot of those young folks coming up, if they have a role model, let's say Kobe Bryant or LeBron, come on social media and say, hey, all I do is read, this is how I get good, the thing that they're going to do is start reading. They get their favorite football players, their favorite basketball players, the people they idolize. But if they're watching Blueface and all these other social media characters that, they just living.
Yeah.
They just want to have fun, and that's what they're idolizing. They're looking at the clothes they wear and stuff like that. But if they have these other people that they look up to, let's say Blueface is out here reading a book. Oh, you guys want to make $1 million?
Yeah.
Read this book about how to make $1 million.
Yeah.
And if they have more role models, if we have more role models, people in our communities that really advocate for reading and self-development at a youth, like if somebody would have come up to me when I was 15 years old, 14 years old, and say, hey, do you want to be a millionaire when you get older? Here's what you do. And if they say reading is going to be the thing that make me a millionaire, I'm going to start reading every day.
Yeah.
I'm going to start reading every day. But a lot of people in our community, like you said, the lawyers, you think about people that become successful, they say we made it out of the hood. Right. And a lot of them don't go back. You got some of them that do go back.
Right.
But if it's a lawyer, doctor, somebody like that, they make it out the hood. They're going to buy a house in a different neighborhood. Sometimes they'll give back. They'll call it giving back instead of being part of the community and making a difference. Giving back is cool, and it shows that you're present.
Right.
But a lot of it sometimes is more for publicity and showing like, hey, I did give back.
Yes.
But there's not really a lot of significance behind it. They just do it just to say they did it. But if somebody really were to come up to me, because one of the things that I was thirsty for is just really, really trying to learn from other people. And if I saw somebody that was successful and I say, all right, do you want to mentor me? A lot of folks won't come up to you and say, hey, can you mentor me? Right. But that's so important.
Yeah.
Like you think about progressing in your career, a lot of times people say you got to get a sponsor, you got to get a mentor.
Right.
And that's not something. I had a mentor when I was in school, but I didn't think anything of it. It wasn't important to me. It was just like a big brother program type of deal. But that is important if you relate to that mentor and they're really giving you life advice and they say, hey, you got to read, you got to do this, you got to do that, and you take them seriously. And if it's coming from somebody who loves you and they have your best interest in mind, like you would know that is such a crucial thing for your self-development. Like that's huge. But yeah, I think that's a big reason why we don't see a lot of our high school kids reading books or anything, because they don't see it coming from people that they idolize.
Hey Bree, so what can you and I know even though we family and you look at even when. Like, what do you think, even, like, what is your message to your own family? What do you think people need to do? Because sometimes we get, that's one thing I always try to get, like, my brothers involved and people aren't, it's like if one of the things you see with a lot of us as blacks and brown, like if we throw parties, everybody's there. But if we throw something like self-development or something like that, it's like a ghost town.
Yeah, crickets.
And that's the thing that we're so quick to to cling on to things that are unhealthy, but not wanting to focus on things that are healthy for us. But I think, and that's one of the things that I think it starts with the closest people that's around you. And sometimes, what would you say to them, Bree?
So, kind of taking in a combination of things that you said.
Gotcha.
So for one, this idea, which is a problem we see with any type of minority communities, whether it's race, sex, gender, whatever it shall be, the important conversations need to happen. The people who need to hear them are most likely not in the room.
Gotcha.
So oftentimes we have to find a way to bring these important conversations to the people who want to hear them, who need to hear them, I shall say. So something that I've been working on in the process, like I said, of I own my own businesses, plural, with the mentorship proportion with Owning My Blackness, something we were doing in the past is we would have fun events, which would kind of draw students and our peers there, but we would add an educational piece component to it. For example, one of the events we put on all the time is called Don't Touch My Hair. We would bring in a hair braider or a barber to teach us how to put braids, dreads, beads in our hair, and that would bring a lot of people out because a lot of people are interested in hair care. Right. But while we were there, we would teach about the cultural aspect and what's the meaning behind this Don't Touch My Hair. What does it actually mean when we say that braids were used during slavery? What was that? Okay, when we talk about the history and the defensiveness about touching hair, where does that come from? Oh, black hair was shaved off and used to stuff furniture.
Yeah.
The skin and flesh and hair that you sit there and find like cool was used to sew and make belts and make shoes. We talked about all that history and had those important conversations as we sit there and talk about, oh, you have 4C hair, you should use this product. Right. So finding different ways to make this educational fun in an aspect, in a sense, is something that I always recommend doing. And also surrounding yourself by like-minded people and people that where you want to be. Again, that idea of creating your own environment. Like I said, almost my entire life, I was privileged in that aspect that the environment I grew up in, I went to York Suburban through high school, and then I went to private York College. So I was usually surrounded by middle to higher middle class white students whose parents were doctors, lawyers in the sense. But also the environment I had at home, that aspect of how this all ties into parents. Although I was raised more in a single-parent household, even though I had that father figure, I was more solely raised by my mother. She did not play about that. And because she didn't play, I didn't play. Because I was like, y'all, my mom was crazy. I ain't doing it. So, half of our senior class got in trouble for some big old party. I was invited to that party, but I did not put myself in them environments because I knew Nicole was going to track my phone, figure out where I'm at. I'm not doing it. It's not worth it. So that aspect of how all these things play a role, and in the aspect of where I am now, when we talk about I'm a multi-business owner, I'm a 2 regional award winner, I'm working a master's degree all before I'm 25. This is not accidental.
No.
This is not by chance.
You were shaped and molded by it.
Yes. My mother shaped and molded me. The environments I was put in, for example, my school district stretched very much from 5th grade. You need to know how to write. You need to know how to write. You need to write a research paper. You know how to research and how to read by 5th grade until you graduate.
Wow.
And every single grade, if you could not write a 10-page research paper, you would not pass that grade.
Oh.
That was a standard. If you want to graduate, you pass that research paper, point blank, period. Wow. So now when I get to my master's degree and I can write a paper in my sleep, people are sitting here thinking like, oh my God, she's so intelligent. No, my environment molded me. If I wanted to get to where I want to get to, I better learn how to do it.
Yeah, practice. It was kept being enforced on you throughout your life, and that's what we're missing in the inner city. I was
about to say, now when I go back and I work in an inner city school district, and that is almost taboo to me that I have 10th, 11th, 12th graders who look at me and say, what is MLA format? And I've been learning it since 5th grade.
Wow.
And I'm said, how do you not know MLA format? And this aspect, when we talked about earlier, to break it down a little bit more, and we said that literacy literally connects to prison beds. And what are you producing? When you get out here and you try to find jobs, these skills to have, you sit there and you have to read over this document before you sign it the contract you sign every time you start a job. Like, these are our policies and such. If I can't read that and I'm putting my name on it and all of a sudden I get fired for things and they say, but you signed it off, but I can't read it. Now I'm going to go to easy money. What's easy money? I asked my 10th graders. We just had an open, honest conversation because we were having a conversation about economics because I teach honors business. Right. And they thought all these things were surprising. And I said, okay, how many of you guys, just by show of hands, believe that you live in a lower income neighborhood or a middle class neighborhood? Almost all of them raised their hands. I said, great, because we were talking about grocery stores. Like, how many have access to a corner store? Almost all of them raised their hands. Like, how many have access, legal or illegal, to a place that sells drugs or alcohol? Almost all of them raised their hands. Said, how many of you guys can walk to a grocery store from your house? Half the hands went down. Said, okay, how many of you guys can walk to a bank from your house? Even more hands went down. I was like, please, this is not, as we talk about the molding of the environment, it is not situational. It is not accidental that these things happen. It is not accidental that in our urban school districts, 11th graders don't know what MLA format is and cannot read, but they will go on and we talk about, because they're inner city youth, we're going to give them a full scholarship to this HBCU. What are they to do to that when they get there? Yeah. Because college classes will not sit there and break down MLA format for you. No. They will not tell you what APA format is. They will not tell you how to access their book. They will give you a syllabus, again, that you have to read because they are not going to walk it down for you. That gives you all your assignments. You can't read? 0 on your first assignment. Right. You never learned about plagiarism? Not only did you get a 0, but you failed this class and you must repeat it. And now you talk about how expensive school is. Now you're in debt. Right. Especially around this time. This is your first time outside of your parents. I'm waving credit cards as a bank in front of your face. Now you just entered credit card debt because you think it's free money. I'm going to buy a PS5, the newest Jordans. Mom can't tell me nothing because I'm off campus living on my own. We are literally, when I say this, and I've just said it before, setting our youth up for failure. Yeah. When we talk about the products we are producing, because we are not giving them the necessary skills, the environment, the discipline that they need, whether they don't get it at home or not. They're not getting it in school. They're not getting it at home. And they're sure enough not putting themselves in the correct environment to get that influence. And then we sit here and wonder why they act the way they do. Yeah. Why they want to sit there and cuss you out. Why they're getting in fights with teachers, principals, and other students at school and outside of school. Why is there stabbings outside of schools?
And then it all boils down.
It is not coincidental, is the point I'm trying to pick. It's not an accident.
And hurt people. Yeah. That's another thing. Yeah. But I'm gonna go to you, let you finish up, Joe, and what could be your message to the youth and even to not only that but to our viewers and the family members that maybe that do tune in and we're definitely going to have you back. That's one of the things. I'm definitely going to have you back and being more involved as we continue to move forward in our progress to bringing change and awareness to our inner city youth and bringing solutions. That's the biggest thing.
Yeah, it is. It is.
So go ahead.
Yeah. So I mean, there's a few things that come to mind. The first is, you brought it up before. Is set up a vision. Like visualize how you want your future to be. The most successful people think 5 and 10 years out, long-term solutions instead of just short-term gain. And so if you think and you visualize how you want to be in, let's say 5 years, like you want to, be living on your own, you want to buy a house, how does that look like for you? Do you think about it? How can you reverse engineer what that success look like? Because one thing that you'll do subconsciously is your brain will try to fill the gaps. Like if you're thinking 5 years out and you say, hey, I want to be a business owner, I want to do this, I want to do that, you will automatically start reverse engineering that vision, like you bring it into fruition. So that would be probably the number one thing. The second thing is write down your goals. Right, yeah. and like that can be daily, that can be weekly, that can be a year, and constantly look back at your goals. Like on a daily basis, remind yourself what you're working towards. Because those people who don't write down their vision, don't write down their goals, it's kind of like you're just out there aimlessly working or doing, you don't have any direction. The final thing is, Bree brought it up, who you associate yourself with.
Big.
That's so important.
It's so important.
That's so important because
who's influencing you?
Oh man, that's what it boils down to, is who's influencing you. And if you have a circle of people, let's say you're a junior in this business thing, and you got people that's been doing it 15, 20 years, and that's your circle, you are automatically going to go up because the information that they're sharing, whether they know it or not, is influencing your decision making. Like you're learning from their experiences. So you got somebody who's been there, done that, and they're in your circle, you're going to automatically learn from it. And that's super important. Who you associate yourself, they indirectly influence your state of thinking, your decision making, and that's crucial. So those are the three things I would say: visualize your future, write down your goals, and choose wisely who you associate yourself with.
Awesome.
Yep.
I do want to say one more thing, because as we all say, we like to be solution-based around here. If you're a parent who's listening and you're trying to think of next steps, easy things you can implement, as much as we talk about limiting things like, oh, I limit TV time, I limit phone time, what you can also do is, instead of limiting, you can expand time. Like, oh, you want an extra hour on your phone? Well, then you need to read an extra hour of a book.
Or read together.
Or you can add together.
Or read together. That's one thing that I think,
aspect is.
Yeah, and then go back and forth from what you have read.
Yeah.
You know, that's another great thing you can do. Go ahead. I didn't mean to
No, you're perfectly fine.
Yeah.
Also, on that aspect, when you talk about creating that environment, parents, again, as much as we want to sit down and set rules, you can also have those open-ended conversations, which is something we brought up before in podcasts, building up that relationship and trust with your child. That does not mean being their best friend, but you are their biggest influence.
Yes.
Regardless of how you want to view it or not. So you can sit there and talk to them, like, oh, what do you want to do with your life? Well, then maybe you should do X, Y, and Z. Because as much as they don't want to hear it, again, you have the biggest influence over them. They are probably going to do it to get you off of their back regardless.
Right. Yes.
Right.
When you think of a child who might be listening, some type of student or young adult, you can, like we talked before, influence your own environment, decide who you're talking to, decide who you follow on social media, who is taking up your time, who are you consuming. And also, like you mentioned, plan out your goals. When he talks about reverse engineer, that might mean if I know I want to be a lawyer by the time I'm 30, okay, to be a lawyer, I need to get to law school. To get to law school, I'm going to have a bachelor's degree. Okay, to have a bachelor's degree, I can major in anything before I go to law school. What am I good at? Those are those back steps that you take to get there. You need to figure those things out. Yeah. So when I talk about things like that, if you're a person in the community, you may not have kids, you may not be a kid, you can go volunteer. There are plenty of nonprofits and groups that do this work. NAACP, the APJ Foundation, I mentioned Oh My Blackness also does mentoring. They are always looking for volunteers, people to attend, people to help out. Different ways as a community we can continue to come together and we can all do small things. Like I all mentioned, all those things I mentioned are very feasible, they're very small, low money.
Yes.
That we can all do. So those are solution-based ideas for different types of people who may be listening to the podcast. If you want to close off something.
And did you want to say something else?
I would say, I think it's extremely important to mention that there's never too late of a starting point.
Yeah.
So even if you're in high school and you're not academically successful, you can change the narrative. Like if you're not good in school, you can still become a business owner and can still be self-employed. I think school is important, and if you're going to go down that collegiate route, that's important. If you're going to have one of those traditional careers as a lawyer, as a professor, as a teacher, that stuff is important. But the reality is, a lot of the opportunities that are available today, you may not have to go through college. It is important that you get your general understanding of education, for sure, graduate high school. But if you didn't do that well, I would say typically we pick up on negative talk, like our brain picks up on the things that are happening around us that may be negative, and it allows us to kind of get down on ourselves and we become depressed. Right. But you can control that narrative, and as long as you know that there's other opportunities out there and you're being encouraged or empowered to pursue that. And if you find it in yourself to start reading and start developing yourself, like there's never too late of a starting point. And so for those older individuals, let's say they're 19 coming into their 20s, because we're really developing for the most part between our teenage years up until I would say late 20s. And so as long as you have somebody in your corner that is kind of push you in the right direction or giving you advice, that's where that mentorship comes from. Like you can never be too old for a mentor. I think it's very, very important just to note that it's never too late to start, even if you didn't do academically well in school.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. One of the things I was and I also read today, and it was like it has to do with self development. You know, I mean, that's one of the things I'm focused on. I'm working on me. You know, what I mean, even as we speak.
Yeah.
You know, I want to be the best version of myself, not from last year, but to this year. You know, what does this hold right now for myself? And one of the things I read was is like, you know, when we are foolish, we want to conquer the world. When we are wise, we want to conquer ourselves. And that's the biggest thing for me is working on me. And that's one thing I want to share with everyone else out there, the youth, and even as us as adults. Work on you more than you work on anything else. Work on you because it starts with you. And as you start to grow, you know, I hear a lot of people say, "Oh, this is the way I am." No, that's the way you're choosing to be. And you don't have to be like you was last year.
Facts.
You can always change and develop. But yeah, this was a great segment. And one of the things, Joe, I definitely want you to come back because one of the things I want to focus on too with our next podcast is we want to talk about the physical health part.
Okay.
And we want to really get into that, how that ties into the mental health part.
Oh, so important.
And it's going to be so important. And as always, I thank you, Bree, for coming and shedding. You know what I mean? You're amazing and bright, and I love you, cuz, you know what I mean? I appreciate everything you as you bring to the podcast. And
Dropping that history, man.
Exactly,
A
the
lot of that
knowledge.
stuff.
Yeah,
Yeah.
she's on point. And as always, you know, once to the TV world, everyone out there is, you know, to the young men and women out there, and even adults, you know, once we change our way of thinking, we'll change our way of living, and keep God first. Peace and love. Thanks.
See ya.